Hello everyone. I am Purkho Bheel. You are watching exclusive interview series by SARIM. Today with us, very well-known personality, Mr. Leslie Martin. He is Dalit women rights activist. He is being associated with NCDHR New Delhi. Currently, he is working as a social activist and affiliated with grassroots level organizations, especially Dalits and children organizations. My first question is, Mr. Leslie, what sort of difficulties you have encountered as a member of marginalized group? Have you ever felt insecure or has been treated unfairly or discriminated because of your identity? And how do you handle the real life crisis?
First of all, I have to say that I have been fortunate enough to have grandparents, great grandparents, and my parents into education and doing various government jobs at their levels and migrating to different cities. So the way I was handled, I was handling caste-based discrimination was that my education was giving me the power and also empowering me, and also I did not face any direct caste-based discrimination or any remarks, but I used to face in a subtle way from the other caste groups or my friends or my family friends. My interaction with the caste came. We were living in a place called Chittoor in Andhra Pradesh of India, and we will go to my mother's village, which is about 600 kilometers away from Chittoor, for every summer. So there I could see that we have to walk 3 to 4 kilometers by carrying our luggage from the main bus stop to reach the hamlet, the Dalit hamlet. So en route, we used to have thatched huts, and we used to have fields, greenery. So I enjoyed those journeys. But I always used to have why we have to walk 3 kilometers and why our habitation has only thatched roofs and with no walls. The thatched roof and 4 pillars, mud pillars. And it used to be open. Houses used to be open. So I used to think in my mind at that stage itself, why this kind of a housing for us? Why we are living far away from the main village? And what is the livelihood nature of this village? Why our people are only working as laborers, not having minimum wages and all. So during that time, interestingly, I had a classmate in Chittoor. When I was studying 5th class, I visited my mother's village, and he also visited the same village. But he was belonging to upper caste family, and I was belonging to lower caste family. But we didn't know about it when we were studying in Chittoor. So during we were going in the fields, and I was on the buffalo during that 5th class summer vacations. And this person, my friend, comes in front of me in the fields on a bicycle, followed by a number of his relatives. And from my side, cousins were there. We both saw each other and quite happily wanted to connect and hug and all, because It's an encounter in a village 600 kilometers away from where we were studying. But silently, my cousins and his cousins who were around him, they saw that we do not face each other, but crossed paths, not even saying hello to him. So then afterwards, I came back and to Chittoor, and I met him, and I was asking him why we could not meet. He said he also doesn't know why his cousins objected to it. So that was my first encounter of caste. Then after growing up, as I was from the education my parents were from education background. So I did not feel that much of I did not face that much of caste, but I could not feel it that I was facing it, even though it was being subtly expressed by my friends, my close friends who were all upper caste. But that I could not feel at that moment. So when I wanted to work during that time, one Brahmin girl who I fell in love, and she also fell in love with me, could not marry me, saying that she specifically said, because of your caste, my parents will die. So I do not want to lose my parents by marrying to you. So that is the kind of situation that I was encountering, and I was having in my mind, what is this difference? Why we are not treated equally, or why the girl who is in love with me has to say that my parents will kill themselves if I marry. So this is some questions that in my background that left me. And when I joined an organization called Prajwala in Chittoor, because they were looking for computer operator, and at that time I was the first generation computer operator. There I completely got turned and shocked that how I could not resist, I could not feel the caste discrimination that I was facing subtly towards me during my childhood and education and all.
You are an activist who is inclined to fight for the rights of Dalits. So tell us what inspired you, motivated you to be a social activist.
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
What motivated me?
Yeah.
See, as I was saying, when I started working for that organization, which was headed by a couple called Paul Divakar and Annie Namala. So they were working for Dalit rights. They were actually organizing the agricultural laborers and see what their issues are. The first thing they thought that it's a wage problem because they were not getting minimum wages. So that's where I joined them as a documentationist for documenting on computer. There, when I started writing down the stories, whatever the proposals they will have to write, they have to type it, and I could grasp the concepts, and I could grasp the immensity of the stark reality of Dalits, and in my own life, how I was negating it and how I didn't even know that I was going through it. And during that time, especially, Bejada Wilson, who was running a campaign against manual scavenging, was associated with him, and I was helping him in documenting his proposals, his issues that were coming across, and that shook me my core, because as I'm typing that manual scavenging, how it is being done, and pasting photographs of onto that. So I was recollecting how I used to ignore, or how I used to avoid when I see these manual scavengers coming in front of me as a childhood. So why I myself was doing that. being away from running away from them, or not directly meeting them, or not directly encountering them. So that shook me a lot, because here I was directly documenting and meeting people who are gathering data of manual scavengers in Chittoor district. So interestingly, I was young boy at the time, so I used to be very strict with the timings, office timings, 9 to 5, and whatever work that was there, I used to finish before that. But for documentation, I used to, for manual scavenging data, the person who brings the data comes around 4:30, 4:45 in the evening, and I have to document at that time. So I used to get angry with him, because why he was an elderly person. Why he is coming at 4:45, even though he knows that I'm available only 9 to 5 in the office. So it was before getting angry on him, I asked him at what time you get up to work. So I was feeling very proud that I get up at work at 6 o'clock at home and get ready and come and do the work, start doing the work. I was shocked when I heard his working schedule. He gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning, packs his breakfast and lunch, and starts coming onto the road for a transportation, and gets onto any bullock cart, any lorry that comes on the way that picks him up, or he'll start walking if no other transportation is there, and go to the neighborhood manual scavenging location, and there by 6 o'clock he will be there at the location. There he'll start by 4:30 or 5 he'll be at that location. That is the time the workers, manual scavengers come to work. And so how he tries to build a relationship with the manual scavengers, fellow manual scavengers, who doesn't know him. How they used to, when he wants to go near to them and talk to them, they used to run away from him. They used to hide themselves. Then he has to specifically introduce them himself, saying that I am also manual scavenger. I've come here to talk to you, spend time with you, and all. And after a couple of hours, then they'll become close with him and they'll share their stories with him. By the time it will be 11 o'clock. So after that, he again comes to the road, catches any transportation that is available for him. Sometimes he has to wait for 1 hour or 2 hours for the right bus to come, or travel in 2-3 buses or 2-3 transport lorries, and reach office at 4:30 in Chittoor town, and starts opening his lunch box. So when I heard that the manner, his working style, and how difficult it is to gather information from people, that really changed my lifestyle at all. So after that, I started staying in the office itself, not bothering about the dress I used to wear, not bothering about formalities and all. So then I started documenting, and so that was the inspiration for me, Bejada Wilson, and the people who were doing the manual scavenging and bringing me the data, and the people who are working at grassroots level in addressing the land rights issues, and they used to come with their stories. So I have to talk activists at those days. They have to come. They'll come with me in their language, and I have to document it on the paper. And newspapers I have to go through, and I have to document the atrocities that are published in the newspapers. So that was a learning experience, and that was a learning process for me, which shook me like anything. And that inspired me to go into read into Ambedkar, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Got in touch with B.R. Ambedkar. And I read a lot of books about Ambedkar. And two striking conversations which he was having, that gave me the hope for my involvement, complete involvement into the movement. Those two words are, he was saying, ours is a battle not for wealth or power. It's for reclamation of human personality. So there was a lot of meaning in the battle that he was mentioning, and why that battle is necessary, not for wealth or power, but equality and human personality. Because the caste system has made dehumanized persons' personalities in such a way that he felt the need to reclaim the personality that which the human possesses. And for that, he said, educate, agitate, organize. So coming from a background of doing a PG diploma in human resource management, gaining into knowledge of organizations and organizing. So there I put my skills into practice of organizing the community and empowering them and documenting how to document the process documentation, which is very much needed at that time to expose to bring out the realities of the communities, because we had the computer knowledge at that time. So this was my inspiration.
As you have been working with the Dalit Jan Ceramic Union, kindly tell us about it and also brief us the focus areas, prime objectives, and movements of your union, like how you are supporting and fighting for the rights of Dalits and deprived communities within India.
Yeah. As I was said, Prajwala was trying to organize the agricultural laborers and fighting for their rights. So at that time, the idea of starting an union was the trade union and structure it at all levels, that is at block level, district level, village level, and state level. So that was the process of thinking and working and networking with the different NGOs that were situated in different districts and blocks, and who had Dalit leadership. So into that process of documentation that I started doing, I started coordinating for the meetings that are taking place, writing the minutes of the meetings, and documenting the process, and involving in the negotiations that are happening and ideas that are coming forward. So at that time, we all shifted to Hyderabad, started to start the state level trade union, and we named it as Dalit Bahujan Shramik Union, because we felt it's the identity that is coming in between in Dalits enjoying their entitlements of minimum wage or land rights or anything or equality, and that needs to be addressed, that needs to be focused, that needs to be advocated, that needs to be negotiated with the administration, authorities, and leaders, and it has to, those kind of violations are equal to human rights violations. Like, so Dalit rights are human rights was a slogan coined in that process of the movement, building up of that union. So after union, I became the training secretary at state level. So my role was in organizing the village level sanghas, and how leadership has to be in place with them, and how they can do the committee meetings, and how they can identify the issues by themselves, and how they can work on the issues by themselves, how they can give representation at the local level and at district level, and if what the state level union has to do in support of that committee. So first it started with land rights, because land was one of the primary importance to Dalit community. Land ownership was one of the prime importance to Dalit community because they were landless. And we had released bonded laborers working, taking the leadership positions. See, interesting. Released bonded laborers took up the leadership positions of this trade union because they know where the laws or how it is being discrimination happens, and unknowingly how they are involved in accepting it. But after getting released, they got empowered and they wanted to do away the caste system, caste-based discrimination in their villages. That was quite an inspiring moment for us as a trade union. So we started working on land rights. So we trained on people to various laws that are placed in place, legislations that are in place, which can give us access to land, like land assignment land act is there. There is another law called it's an old law, and land reforms. Through land reforms, Indira Gandhi brought in lot of land reforms during that time, and land sealing act was there. So those acts we have utilized, and we asked our community members to start surveying and identifying the lands which are available and which are not in possession of the Dalits, which Dalits can claim. So that it took 2 years for even the community move into the field because they were afraid. So they have to face the leadership of upper caste directly. And then we started focusing on the monitoring of implementation of SC/ST POA Act. So we brought it down, broke the law into different segments, rules into different segments, what has to happen at police stations, what are the police stations authorities, their role, what is people's role in it, and various levels, what are the roles and responsibilities of authorities, and what the law says at various levels. So we started capacitating our team members, our activists and community on those stages on the law. So that simultaneously, that training also helped in community gaining the confidence and moving and doing the survey, which in about 1,000 villages across Andhra Pradesh in about 100 blocks, and it brought in about 150,000 acres of lands that can be reclaimed by Dalits. So that was a huge data, which we presented to the state authorities and district authorities and block level authorities. And we did a lot of dharnas during that time to reclaim those lands. And we almost all got 1.25 acres of lands easily from the government. And our people started enjoying those. That was the final success. On implementation of Act, SC/ST Act, we started doing fact findings of any incidents that are taking place or that are reported in the newspapers. And we used to meet the victims and find out from them what happened and interpret the law and make a representation what human rights violation has being done in that issue, and what SC/ST violation has been done, what IPC violation is there. So we started representing data issues in the human rights violation wise. So like that, we started documenting cases of atrocities, and which our team was going and fact finding, and we filed cases against the perpetrators, We did a lot of dharnas. The union did a lot of dharnas towards them. So I was involved in making this happen in the organization as a training secretary. So documentation comes to my table. So I need to, I'll do the documentation. I have to see what kind of violation it is breached, either human rights violation or SC/ST Act violation or Land Act violations or any other violations. So what needs to be done at local level, that kind of documentation I have to bring out from this. So after that, capacitating the grassroots level leadership. So that was the momentum that it gave. And these are the two core areas of union membership, union activities. Then the third area that which after getting land rights, land into our hands, we wanted that lands to be developed. So we started focusing on livelihood issues, how Dalits can gain livelihood from those lands. So we started interacting with the government, Andhra Pradesh, to give some money allocate money for land development of Dalit lands, which are not able to use as it is. So then the money started coming in with various schemes around it, and then we started focusing on supporting other movements which have happening at the time, and we formed a network called DAPU network. So DAPU network was consisting of differently abled people's collective. That is the leadership, differently abled people's collective. They take up their issues, and it was having a wing of human rights research and advocacy unit, and it had a unit of cooperative movement, organizing the agricultural laborers, women into SHG groups and all. And at the same time, the manual scavenging issue was also became a state level movement at that time, because Bijada Wilson also started coming at state level, and we started organizing them, and we started collaborating. The union gave the voice to the manual scavenging issue through the rights-based approach, and also different labeled people's issues, collaborating with them, collaborating their voice, raising their voice, and also cooperative movement issues, raising their voice. The research wing was, documentation researching was helping us in trainings, like legal trainings, and into bringing in larger awareness into the society through documentation and sustained way of publications. It started bringing in, and this was the momentum that the union was doing. At the same time, we also started building up Dalit Women Forum, exclusive with Dalit women leadership, and now it is taken a shape of a Dalit Sri Shakti, and now it is for almost 10 years. It has been 15 years that it started functioning, and Dalit women are taking leadership positions, and they started documenting and bringing change in the lives of Dalit women, and focusing on Dalit women, bringing into the society the awareness about Dalit women rights as human rights. So this is the core area of. So during that time, as a training secretary, I have to interview survivors of atrocities. Maybe in about 1,000 villages, I have visited all the villages. Luckily, I visited all the villages. Around maybe I would have interviewed or documented around thousands of families' atrocity issues, from murder to rapes, gang rapes. To at that time, I was struggling how to converse with them, how to bring out their story, because it needed a kind of a communication language and kind of a setting, that atmosphere, so they can feel comfortable in expressing, not not being fearing the upper caste who are living in that village. So that is that it was a learning for my life, how to empathize with the victims, how to make them open up and talk. It used to take a lot of time for me, but the minute they see me, after experiencing me and after introducing me, they will open up very easily. So they used to very strengthened by the interaction that they were having. They used to stand for their rights, and they were never compromising on the any pressure on compromising comes from the upper caste. They never used to compromise on the issue that they have faced. They have it happened to in their families. So that is the, and at the same time we also as union also started focusing on the disasters that are happening during that time and how discrimination caste comes in play in relief and rescue operations of the government and also by NGOs. How Dalits will be left out, how Dalits will be excluded in the relief operations. So that perspective, because this we got it after the tsunami that which happened in 2004, and a lot of issues came out for Dalit issues came out, exclusion issues, discrimination issues came out during that time. So, and even to remove the dead bodies during tsunami time, the government took the manual scavenge to those locations, transported in aeroplane the manual scavenge to remove the carcasses of dead bodies and animal dead bodies. So that was the kind of humiliation that the community was facing at that time. So we started interacting in intervening in that situation also by empowering the community with the law that existed and the equality that the law talks about. So that was the intervention which even now I am associated with the trade union, DBSU, and we had this policy of change of leadership for every 2 years, giving more power to people who are coming from grassroots level. So that used to that cycle with that cycle I have to move out and give space to the leader that was emerging, and now I am associated with them. Whenever they need help, they come to me and all.
You have also been affiliated with NCDHR New Delhi. Kindly brief us the primary goals of NCDHR and how this platform is working to resolve the issues of minorities and persecutions.
Okay, when I started working, this is also comes from Chittur. When I started working for Paul Divakar, at that time from Chittur he was operating. At that time, the NCDHR was being initiated. So he was giving me the work related to NCDHR. So that's how I got in touch with the NCDHR. So then I started playing the role of secretariat in charge. So it's not a like simple coordinating the meetings, communicating to the different state leaderships that were part of NCDHR campaign, fixing venues or fixing meetings whenever they wanted to have, and they need a person to coordinate all those things and coordinate with the national level team members and all. So that was the brief interaction that I was having with NCDHR. And while moving into union, a union was part of support to the NCDHR movement at grassroots. So that used to give strength to union. Union work is to strengthen the work of the national level advocacy that was initiated by the campaign at national level to bring justice and also make a national level legislative documentation monitoring possible. So that's my association with that. So even still now I am associated with them because I have grown in these two organizations. I've grown in that. So here NCDHR is National Campaign on Dalit Human Rights is basically an advocacy campaign for Dalit human rights. Advocacy requires the research of violations that are taking place at grassroots level and capacitating the grassroots level leadership Dalit organizations which are focusing on Dalit rights with the tools and mechanisms that are required that will enable that will strengthen the community leadership at local level. It may be in terms of capacity building on the special acts like SCST Act and Land Rights Acts that are there, or a Disaster Management Act that is there, or Women's Acts that are there when there is women's rights, or Manual Scavenging Act and its implementation, how manual scavengers of different locations, states, or can be organized, or how to bring in this documentation into the so that was like a movement strengthening the grassroots leadership, doing national level advocacy with the policymakers, lawmakers, with specific evidence-based documentation. So evidence-based documentation was very the capacity of the NCDHR campaign, NCDHR whole movement at all. So policymakers also could not say anything. They have to accept the documents that are presented to them. They have to work. They were forced to work on the loopholes that are taking place, and they have to do a lot of policy changes that was happening, and that was very much needed for the communities. And the policy makers also started training their own officials. Of course, we were helping them, NCDHR was helping them in those trainings, but they designed their national level training programs for DGPs, IGs, police personnel, judiciary, the judges, Supreme Court judges, and district level judges, state level judges, focusing on Dalit rights and how the acts pertaining to these marginalized groups have to be addressed while the cases come to the courts. So that was the strength of NCDHR campaign. So that started, so in that I started involving after my union's work, after I left union, I joined NCDHR at the national level. And at that time, they were working on how to bring child rights perspective within NCDHR and cultivate the child rights perspective across organizations with specific focus on Dalit and Adivasi children's issues, which no other child groups were addressing. Even though we had a lot of child rights interventions at national level and larger level up there, but none of them were addressing very focusedly Dalit and child rights issues. So there I sat down and started looking at how to organize that, conceptualize, how to organize into, take it forward into the institution, and how to engage the local level leadership to work on, to focus on Dalit children rights issues also, how to engage with the national level child rights bodies also was one of my core interventions at the time. So this gave me the full-fledged, made me a full-fledged person. Looking at all the perspectives of Dalit leadership struggles and all the various areas that it needs focused attention. We cannot, that needs organizing, as Ambedkar said, organize, agitate, educate, agitate, organize. So in different ways of organizing the community leadership on different themes, I was able to do it at the time. And then NCDHR also moved into Asian Dalit Rights Forum, looking at the Asia level Dalit rights organization, because caste issue is not only Indian issue, but it's a South Asia issue that needed to be addressed, because caste is there in Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. Uh, this, these are some of the locations. So this Asia Development Dalit Rights Forum was initiated, and we started collaborative work with Dalit organizations which are existed to build a movement to the UN. One of the strongest lobbies of NCDHR was lobbying with the UN bodies, UN mechanisms, like United Nations child rights violations, or UNICEF, or universal periodic reviews that were taking place, or human rights committees that were sitting in. So all the NCDHR, what was it was doing was, it was trying to build a momentum to impact the human rights mechanisms by way of documenting and bringing out alternative reports apart from Government of India reports to be presented, and organizing various thematic side events during UN meetings, and trying to engage different parliamentarians of the world, different nations to see that they raise the issue of caste-based discrimination while they're interacting with UN in UN bodies. So that was also one of the main core activities of National Campaign on Dalit Human Rights, and that paved way a lot in trying to look at how it can be addressed, even though they have brought it under the definition of work and dissent-based discrimination. So now NCDHR and along with Asian Dalit Rights Forum started a global campaign by identifying the communities that are even more marginalized or facing discrimination, like caste-based discrimination, different countries, and talking with them, and raising the need to strategically build networks, partnerships in making UN hear the discrimination aspects also. So that is the strength of, that is what I have learned everything in my life.
The Indian Constitution has a legislation against caste-based rights violations. However, the law doesn't seem effectively practiced with society. Why is it so?
It's lack of political will among the lawmakers and law implementers. Lack of political will, even among the not able to raise that lack of political will of the implementers by Dalit elected MLAs and MPs. That they are not able to raise the parliament, that how they are not using the political will to curb the situation of Dalit rights and Dalit human rights violations that are happening in the country. And it's an everyday affair. If you look at data which is documented by National Crime Records Bureau, at least 6 women get attacked, and at least 8 cases of violence or atrocity take place in India. And in the child rights violations, at least 5 to 6 cases of Dalit and Adivasi youth children getting violated or facing difficulties that are evident in and also the biggest evidence that we gave NCDHR with networking with other organizations, other movements, is that for last 20 for about 20 years after the implementation of enacting the law, there was no review by the parliament, where every year the parliament has to review by its mandatory to review the implementation of the law. But there was no review till 2015. The act came in 1989, the rules came in 1995, and the act was reviewed in 2015 with a lot of pressure from the local groups. And looking at coming out with the lack of political will of the governments even to review an act which is mandatory for them by the government lawmakers to review every year. So that brought in amendments, lot of amendments to the SAST Act, and we brought in a special focus for protection of victims and witnesses. This is one of the journeys of strengthening the victims and witnesses protection through the law till that it was not there. The cases were there. So that was one of the areas of political will that I was talking about. And after breaking that will, political will, and getting amendments, the situation became so conducive for the judges, Supreme Court judges, the lack of apathy in the Supreme Court judges. So when a case came to them, when a counter case came to them at the Supreme Court level, Supreme Court judges, they gave a judgment which dilutes the implementation of the acts and spirit of the act itself. They diluted the act by giving the judgment. And it is a Supreme Court judgment, and it has to be followed. The act has to follow Supreme Court guidelines and Supreme Court directions. But it was nullifying the almost all implementation of the law itself. So then the NCDHR and coalition partners saw it, and I was involved in the advocacy at Telangana state level, with the AP state level, in bringing pressure on MLAs, MPs, and governor, saying that act needs amendment, and what the Supreme Court judges have said is wrong. It dilutes the implementation of the act. So these struggles are the only way that which the political will can be addressed, and that is leadership has to get organized at different stages, at different levels, and they have to use various different advocacy lobby technicalities, technologies, and including UN mechanisms. That's so that is one thing. And at the level of implementation, the complete apathy of implementing officials. So cases not being registered, cases getting compromised when the victim goes to the police station, or waiting for the perpetrator's note to register the case, and also registering counter cases against the victims of survivors, whoever has registered the case. The counter case will be very, very minimal, or it's only a counter case to nullify the case that were actually put a pressure on the survivor or victim. So those are the tactics that states are doing, implementation authorities are doing. But we are strengthened with the act. Act is a very, very beautiful act, and in the human rights mechanisms, there is no such kind of law exists around the world. I can say there is no human rights law across the world which is embedded in the SCST Act. So it also says that those officials who are violating purposefully, they can also be punished under SCST Act. So we took that kind of that law, that section into place, and we started filing cases against the erring officials and documenting those cases again, building up the national level documentation and talking with the various levels. So that's one of the areas that which we need. And the judiciary is interpreting, the police stations are interpreting, because SCST Act is a non-available offense again in an SCST Act is a non-available thing. So bail cannot be given once an FIR registered and a perpetrator arrested. So they are using the loophole of IPC Act and giving station bails. At the station itself, the bails can be done. Or the court, when they come to the court, giving anticipatory bails. So this kind of Jumala is taking place at the police stations level and court levels. So this we are also watching over it and trying to see that those things are also addressed. And apart from that, what is happening is that there is movements have developed against reservation. So that's also one of the hindrances of reclaiming Dalit rights, Dalit human rights in a manner that which needs to be done. And recently also the policymakers have brought in a section of reservations for economically weaker sections in the upper caste community. It is not related to caste-based discrimination at all. Whereas the policies something says based upon caste, based upon identity, the reservation should be applied. But here, based upon economic basis, they have come out and they have modified the law, but for which we are fighting against. So these are the kind of hindrances that are happening, and the voice of the marginalized is being oppressed. The freedom of expression by arresting the activist itself. The human rights, Dalit human rights defenders, or those human rights defenders who are working for Dalit human rights or Dalit issues, they are being harassed. They are being cases are filed against them. They are being arrested, and they are being put pressure on them. Even RT activists also they're under threat. Journalists also under threat. This is another tactics the civil society is bringing pressure onto these people. Upper caste communities are bringing pressure onto these people. So this is also something that which needs to be addressed. So luckily we have human rights defenders guidelines through the UN mechanisms, which we are trying to see that they are being implemented in India also. India being a signatory to the UN body, we are also seeing that separate entities developed for defending human rights defenders itself. So separate unit has been established at Asia level and India level, and separate Dalit human rights into that wing also is established through NCDHR, and they are intervening in that areas. So the whole country, if we see the gross human rights violations, the manner in which needs to be addressed, which cannot be compromised based upon the constitution or being compromised at the implementation level. That's also one of the greatest human rights violations that exist in India. That's a reality in India and also South Asia. And it requires the civil society also raising against that nahi chalega, chua chut nahi chalega. Nahi chalega, chua chut nahi chalega. They have to also have to adopt this slogan and see that they also collaborate and see that the incidents doesn't happen. They get counseling. They also get counseling within their structure or within their caste bodies. That let us not bring India a shame through based upon caste based discriminations or caste violence that are taking place. So that's the constitutional level of violations that constitution is trying to give protection, but at the same time taking the loopholes the players are playing in different manner. But we are there being watched by Dalit human rights defenders and activists.
The youth today is playing a crucial role in the development and betterment of the society. To what extent India youth is contributing in the efforts of securing rights of minorities and what kinds of difficulties do they face?
As Oliver was saying, nowadays the youth are getting organized. Taking the Ambedkar slogan, they're also getting organized. It's very good to see a lot of university students getting organized, a lot of universities having student unions, a lot of educational institutions having student unions. From school level itself, a lot of institutions having students are having or getting organized to address caste-based discrimination in the society, to raise against the voice against the society. So what the difficulties they're facing is, one is the media is not showing their struggles sufficiently as it has to be done. And another thing is that the counter cases that are being filed against these defenders or against these activists. Another thing is the intimidation that is being perpetuated, and the way upper caste use the survivor to bring to put pressure on the activist or the youth. So that is the kind of efforts, difficulties that they are facing. But youth are young enough, and they're understanding, and they're using their own methodologies, their own techniques, their own ways of addressing it. They are have to now gain into networking mode and see that they get sufficient support from the civil society organization.
Thank you. Our next question. As many atrocities against Dalits occur on the daily basis in India, do India's media outlets accurately reports on them? And as compared to reported cases, how many of them are resolved?
This is a huge question here. Media. See, 20 years back, one of our struggles, the Dalit human rights struggle movement was, the media was not reporting cases of atrocities or cases of untouchability, because all these are coming from the forms of untouchability. Atrocity cases are coming from the forms of untouchability or the various forms of untouchability. So we started interacting with the heads of the media houses, saying that why you are not covering human rights violations that are happening to Dalits, that are happening on your crime report. So then they started reporting those cases, any violation that take place. But here also, the thing is that they are not revealing the names of the perpetrators. They reveal the name of the survivor, saying that such and such a atrocity took place on such a person. But by whom, it does not reveal. So this is one angle that with which media we are fighting with. That true fact has to be brought in with actual evidences and actual names. So that's one area. And the mainstream media is not taken up addressing Dalit rights violations as their prime news. So lack of social media. Of course, social media is one thing that which is playing role, but mainstream media is not playing that role. And the cases are reported. The media is not following those cases as it follows the other cases, IPC section cases. So that is also one of the lacks, because the media has at all levels their journalists. At business level, they have journalists, separate business to cater to the business questions. At judiciary level, they have separate journalists to monitor the courts, how they are interpreting, how the judges are giving judgments, and what case is coming, what happened to that case. So that kind of a specific follow-up, even though they are doing for other cases, but for Dalit human rights violation case, even that comes to the court, they are not revealing, they are not coming out with any statements, or their journalists are not there to report the court proceedings of the Dalit human rights cases that are coming. So this is one of the areas of concern in the media for us.
Okay. Moving to the next question. As you are well aware with the global pandemic condition due to COVID, kindly let us know the situation of Dalits in India during the COVID-19. What kind of health and welfare services government provided to the Dalits?
Government took a lot of initiatives in terms of giving ration, giving direct food, cooking food, or giving bringing awareness about the pandemic, giving masks, or raising resources at the local level to give food to the affected families, pandemic affected families. Those kind of measurements were there by the government, but the reach to the Dalit hamlets was minimal. Again, Dalits and tribals were less focused. They were not targeted in relief distribution. No, this comes under Disaster Management Act. So the Disaster Management Act has to take care of the relief and rescue mechanisms, and those areas are very gray areas in the Disaster Management Act, because the Act itself has a loophole where any wrong happens or anything that is not working at ground level, it doesn't have the law does not permit to bring that issue into a discussion as per the law. The law does not have a grievance mechanism set. Other laws all have grievance mechanism set, but this law is the only law in the whole category of laws which lacks that grievance mechanism perspective. But what was our concern was that during that time, pandemic time, Those who wanted Dalits, they were raising the issue of non-relief. They were attacked, and child labor was prevalent, started prevailing among the community. A lack of schools drove a lot of children begging and all. Atrocities were taking place as usual, even if it was pandemic or not pandemic. And they were not being reported, they were not coming into the limelight. And human rights defenders or Dalit rights activists were not able to reach to during the pandemic time. Even budgets were not being given as to the Dalits in the form of schemes or scholarships that were awarded to them. So even budgets were not being implemented, money was not being given. So even though the government says that it has given so much, but when we look at the data and the experiences, a lot of violations that were taking place. So those violations, we tried to, NCDHR as a mechanism for called atrocity tracking monitoring system, in which a victim can raise an issue through mobile or network using internet facility. And then the directions can go to each police station. So we started negotiating with the government to take it up and make it as a government thing, but they did not do it during the pandemic. But after the pandemic, the government took over the helpline number and said that it has made the atrocities tracking monitoring helpline number from our initiative took over by government of central government, and which is one good thing that we can appreciate, change that is coming in. Now we can see lot of issues which are denied at the police stations can get attention through the helpline, because the government authorities themselves, they listen to the victims or survivors when they're reporting.
Our next question, as you know, the Dalit communities is being excluded from almost every domain in the country. Tell us the significance of the caste-based census to encourage the inclusivity of the Dalits in India.
Yeah, census is Dalits and tribals are identified in the census. But what is happening is that recently, last year, I was in a meeting which was held by tribal department of government of Telangana. There, the problem was expressed by the chief minister, Telangana chief minister was, tribal schemes are not reaching to the tribals. Tribal welfare schemes, developmental schemes are not reaching to the tribal communities. So that means government failure is there. So they were discussing how to reach out those tribal communities. So they had civil society organizations also into that meeting. The thing they asked the civil society is data of the tribals communities, census of tribal communities, because even though they had data, census data they have, but that data is outdated. That data is outdated because it's 10 years long gap is there, and we don't know where which person needs what kind of a scheme. Based upon that data, we cannot calculate. So that is the stark reality for us. Dalits are facing, especially where there are laws regarding budgets. That as per the population of Dalit population, the central government or the state governments have to allocate that percentage of budget as per population in the state. Like if the population of SCs and STs is of 25% of the in the state, then 25% of budget has to be allocated for them, and the schemes have to be reached to them directly. So it cannot have schemes which are also benefit others, benefit non-Dalit population. It cannot have schemes. It has to specifically design schemes in such a way that that person, that Dalit individual gets the scheme, gets the money directly into his account, or that hamlet gets the amount into for development, that hamlet, specific hamlet into that. So for implementing this scheme, the census data is not helping us. And also, the government has a policy of, Panchayat has a policy of releasing the budgets based upon population. Now, BCs are don't have census, BC community census. So how does those communities which are very, very marginalized will receive budgets to them? So this census and BC's budget, BC's census is very, very crucial, where disaggregated data can be gathered. Even for the governance itself, this decentralized information census is needed, and that is where we are struggling. And this census also needs to take care of the marginalized caste-based Muslims. Even in Muslim communities also, there are caste and caste-based hierarchy exists. But they're they have taken it as Muslims are taken it as a homogeneous groups. So what they're experiencing is different, because from lower castes also, Hindus got converted into Muslims. So that kind of a conversion is there. And also in Christianity is also, in Christian communities also, the caste system is caste-based discrimination exists, because the conversions took place, but still the caste roles exist invisibly or directly visibly. So this caste-based census is one of the thing that will improve the situation of Dalits and marginalized groups in terms of accessing their entitlements, and budgets also is there. If I take the example of Bible, the Christ was identified through census. If you look at his Bible, the stories, Christ was identified through the census program that was created by, that was developed by the king at that time, just to identify. So even the king thought that how much the census is needed for identification of the right person, not the wrong person, the right person. So in that manner, even if we look at the present context, to identify the right person and right vulnerability, the census are quite important, and caste-based census is quite important to come out with that idea. And only the gray area, blue area, or facility now, the recent policy that has came up only 1 month back, was that community can directly participate in the census enumeration through online. So previously somebody was coming from government side and documenting taking the census. There was no participation of the community into the census. So now the community also can participate if they are willing through online, and they can give their census data. I think this will change a lot uh, in identifying the most vulnerable groups and the actual socioeconomic status of those groups.
Thank you. uh, in the what way do you think the different communities-based organizations as well as regional and international organizations can play a positive role in the social development of the Dalits?
They have to first of all acknowledge uh, the issue of caste-based discrimination. First thing is the acknowledgement, and they have to very strongly come on the government of India to implement the laws that are there very strictly, and they have to pressurize the governments to have disaggregated data. For every policy implementation, data is gathered, disaggregated, and that has to be published in public domain. That should be there. And the one of the most crucial thing is for international organizations and all to identify with Ambedkar and his call for a movement not for wealth or power, but reclamation of human personality, which can happen through education, educating, agitating, and organizing. See, the interesting phrase we have to see is that educating is oneself educating about the biases in his mind. It's not that formal education. It's an education of the mind.
Yeah.
An education of how the discrimination practices are going on around.
Yes.
And then getting agitated about those biases that are existing in the person's mind. Getting agitated that are happening, biases that are happening around the society. And organizing, how to organize in breaking those biases. This is also this is one of the important aspects that international communities or organizations have to believe in and have to acknowledge and then intervene into the Dalit rights. Then the systematic change will come, structural changes will come, because it is a structure. Even the structure also structures also carry the caste system in the implementation of laws are in not able to address the caste system, and so the structural barriers have to be broken only if we follow what Ambedkar has said already and has given a direction, and those people have to believe in that and started working on it.
What recommendation you would suggest for bringing peace and ensuring the safety of Dalits in South Asia region?
For bringing in peace, I suggest we have to work for justice first. All the communities, all the rights violations are justified. Get justice. Without justice, there is no point in talking about peace. Because the version, the beauty of talking about peace is it exists only in the mind. It exists only in the mind, and the person, whoever is thinking, he gets very much what is this? वो नशे में हो जाते हैं, उस नशे में.
Yes.
But practicality is inclusion and justice. There, the person has to think what violation has taken place, what is the justice that is needed for the community, what justice is needed for the man or woman or the child or the vulnerable child, and those justice has to be have a reflection in the mind, then only the peace, we can think of peace, or we can get peace into the society.
How can SARIM collaborate with your organization to help the persecuted minorities within South Asia?
Yeah, one is basically conducting various researches on bringing out the vulnerabilities, or identifying the vulnerabilities of the communities which are trying to get justice, or which are seeking justice. This is one area that the researchers go on. Now we have research based upon implementation of laws, but we don't have researches based upon vulnerabilities of different vulnerable communities, how vulnerable they are in implementation of the laws. And another research that needs to be, that can strengthen the movements, is how far the communities are participating in the implementation of laws or policies that are pertaining to them, that reach out to them. So that kind of a research is also needed. And another research that is needed, collaborative research is needed, is how many policies or laws are prepared by the communities participation. Because community has to be like budget is there. What the budget is needed for me, I only know, because I have my own skills. I can think, I can see my strengths, and I can say these are the idea that I have. I want. If you don't have those kind of participation of people in making the schemes and budgets related to them, we won't we won't be moving anything in this world. I have a very live example of non-participation of community. What happens to by non-participation of community into a scheme? Way back in 15 years ago, no, not way back, 30 years ago, banks were giving loans for agriculture development. So for agriculturers, they were giving loans. For farmers, they were giving loans. So for each farmer, they have an agriculture development officer who has to go around the villages and talk with the farmers and see their needs and bring the proposals. So during that time, one agriculture farmer who was a Dalit, he cleared all the bushes that were there in the land, on the land, and what he needed was water to the land, so that the plants can grow. He can grow, but he knows that the land does not. That land does not have water resources, groundwater resource that land does not have. So he has to get from outside. So what he wanted was a loan for a bullock cart and a tank. So agriculture officer look at the various norms, and he said, no, I can give only money for digging well. So see how policy, what is the need, what is the policy, and how the policy is enforcing the right, the farmer. Even though he knows very well that the land, it does not have water sources. But he took the loan, he started digging. At the same time, he spent money, same loan money also on bullock cart. So finally, what happened is he could not repay the loan. So but by the time he laid a beautiful mango orchard. For about 5 years, he poured water by drawing from outside. But as per the loan, he started digging the well. But he got the water, and it came to the ripening situation. The mangoes came to ripen. At that time, the bank fellows came and robbed, taken over that farm. So then he came to us. Then we are still fighting with the courts, but no respite for the farmer, Dalit farmer. So that's how, if we don't take care of whether the community's participation is there in the policy makings, it will be a complete mismatch.
Would you like to join us in Karachi, Pakistan for our next international conference, which will be take place shortly after the pandemic ends?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you for your time. Thank you
Looking
very
forward
much.
to it.